helping others. And as you read about them, you say, well, they must be enlightened spirits, because you can see that they are totally committed and dedicated to doing good. And Sigismundo is one of them. Adelino, I think, is another one, another character that is described in those books. And those are spirits who, again, they are committed to doing good, and they've been helping people. And at some point, their conscience says, well, it's time for you to come back, because you have a past imbalance, a past debt that you have to repair. There's no one who comes up to them and say, hey, it's time to go. Remember what you've done? Nobody needs to do that. It's our own conscience that by that virtue of becoming aware of what we've done causes naturally to say, I understand that now there are the perfect conditions for me to come back to Earth. So that's very important. At that point, again, if you're lucky, we get to plan, we get to participate, and make a lot of choices. And we're going to talk about those quickly. So, have you ever felt like this? Have you ever felt that either you are the white duckling in your family, or someone is, right? Someone is off, right? Someone is, how come this person is part of my family? I think we all have that. We all can relate to that. We all have, either we have felt like that ourselves, that we don't belong, or we feel that someone in our family is different. And again, there's a reason for that, right? So let's talk about the types of family very quickly here. So obviously there is the blood family, which is the physical, material family that we are all born into, and those are linked by biological ties, our brothers, sisters, mothers and fathers. But there is the spiritual family, which is the real, true family, which is this family of spirits that have a lot of affinity, that is built over time. It's built over interactions that happen through multiple incarnations. And those bonds of affection, of love, get stronger and stronger. And that family keeps on growing. And that is the family we're going to focus on. Because that is the family that matters when it comes to the incarnation. Because that is the family that we're going to plan to reunite with, partially or totally, depending on the circumstance. And as I just said, they are not always the same, right? So, as Johanna usually says in the book Studies in Spiritism, family, as a result, is a group of spirits in need. So that tells you a lot right there. The family is a group of spirits in need. So there's a reason why sometimes it's difficult to operate as a family. In this harmony, most often in this harmony, with urgent and finished business that needs to be attended to in order to be solved thanks to the impositions of reincarnation. In the meantime, spiritual families are gathered on earth in different households to accomplish the noble realizations that they have been engaged on as building arms of the Lord. So what Johanna is telling us is, again, as we come back to earth in families, normally there is a whole story behind why we came back to earth in that particular family. There are many events in the past that ties us to one another, that explain why we are together as a family this time. And sometimes that family that is put together, right, on earth may be made up of members of a spiritual family. So spirits that have a lot of affinity with one another. And you can tell normally. I mean, we all know. We all know deep inside which are those brothers and sisters and cousins and, parents who we have a deeper level of connection with. And that right there tells you that chances are there is history between those two spirits, for instance. Likewise, sometimes we feel like the ugly duckling, right? Or we feel that there's something wrong between me and my brother, me and my sister. There's something wrong between a father and a son. There's animosity. There's antipathy. And why? Well, chances are, again, that those individuals came in that family because they had imbalances in the past. There were events where they hurt each other, and now they are given the opportunity to come back again in a family. Now, the way the family is engineered and is planned is perfect. So don't ever have the thought that, oh, there's something wrong in my family, there's something missing, or, you know, God must have screwed up because, you know, this cannot be right. It is perfect. Perfect. It is the perfect family for the needs that we have in this life. Believe it or not, it's been engineered that way. It's that perfect. You can use the word engineered. It's been carefully planned so that in a family you will have someone who is very strong, someone who is the rock, someone who is the foundation of the house, because they are normally the spirits who have developed a little further. They have, you know, gained a deeper level of awareness, and their role in the family is to be the rock, is to be the foundation, is to try and gel everything together. Sometimes it's a couple, sometimes it's more than one person. But we all know who the person is, right? We all have those figures in our families. Sometimes it may not be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be someone close to us that also plays their role. But we never come alone. We never come without that backup, which is that individual, that spirit that has a role, which is to help us accomplish sometimes those very difficult tasks of mending our relationships, for example. And around that, the spirits will help us build all of the characters that we need to interact with so that we accomplish what we need to accomplish, whatever is the imbalances that we have created in the past. And we're gonna illustrate this with one case from Missionaries of the Light. So why are we here, right? Why do we come to work in families? As I said, for many reasons. But one important concept that I want us to take a second to reflect upon is that families are the nuclei or the nucleus of society, right? So it's a very simple thought, but sometimes we don't pay attention to the fact that if we look out into the society and we don't like what we see, if we don't like what we see in society, if we think there's something wrong with the way society is operating today, if we think that the values are, you know, reversed, that a lot of things need to be done, then you have to stop and think that society is made up of families. So if society is not operating well, absolutely has to be because families are not operating well. There isn't this, virtual entity called society, and that's an entity made up of real families. And then if you look at the families, if they are not operating well, it's because individuals are not operating well, right? We are out of balance. So it all starts with us, and it all starts with our own families. And if that's not working, then it's not a surprise that society has issues, and we believe something must be done. Well, it has to start at home. So the primary reason and for us being here, and the primary environment for our evolution is the family, because in that family you find the most common case, which is past lives animosities. Right? That is the most common. And that explains a lot. That explains why we get along or don't get along with a lot of people in our families, or why we think there are people in our families who have problems. And the funny thing is, we always think it's somebody else, right? Don't we? What are the odds that this group of people here, that we are all right and everybody else is wrong? What are the odds? Maybe we are the right people, but chances are that we are also part of the problem. And we need to keep that in mind as we reflect. But there are also other functions and reasons for families. Missions. There are families who come to Earth on a mission, and together they form organizations, they form foundations, they form companies, actually, that move the world forward, right? Again, there's so many examples. I'm going to just pick on one. You know, you take Melinda and Bill Gates. It's a very strong family. Apparently, very harmonious, hardworking, and with a deep sense of purpose. Obviously, he's still the richest man on earth. And he has donated a large portion of his fortune already in life. So he has already donated, I think, over 90% of his fortune to charity. And some of you who may follow Bill Gates, one of his passions is his foundation, right, with Melinda Gates. So he spends very little time at Microsoft these days. The bulk of his time and his family's time, and not only his wife, but his father and his mother as well, are dedicated to the foundation. And what the foundation does is, very early in his life, he realized that some of the most difficult issues we have in terms of health or just challenges we have in society can be solved by focused and strong injections of resources, i.e. cash. Sometimes it's very hard to solve a problem if you don't have resources to apply to that problem. He realized that he could be extinguishing certain problems from Earth by the virtue of making important material investments in certain areas, like, you know, getting rid of some diseases that happen in people in Latin America who live in the jungle, for example, because no one, first of all, they don't have money. Second, none of the companies that make drugs or medicine have an incentive to deliver the medicine to those people. And the funny thing he realized is those people had diseases that were 100% curable. The medicine already existed, but they were still dying because there's nothing that would connect the two. There's nothing. There was no one out there. There's no conditions to take that medicine to those people. And basically he sees those opportunities and he said, that's my role, is to go there and to solve that problem. I can do that. I have the money, I have the time, and I have the willingness and passion. And that's what he does. And there are many other great examples like this one, where families come to Earth and on a mission, and as a family they deliver on that mission. And then trials and expiations, right? So I guess the first one kind of falls within trials of expiations, but we also have to think that not everything we have to do in a family has to do with past animosity. We just have new skills that we plan on developing in this incarnation. And the family is our laboratory. Whether we like it or not, that's the people who interact first. So, if we decided, even if we don't have any past that with anyone in the family, but personally you have determined that you have to work on your patience, you have to work on your tolerance, your understanding. Those are the individuals who are going to be your guinea pigs, right? They're going to be your laboratory, your lab. I mean, you're going to be trying, you're going to be testing your ability to exercise those virtues with those individuals first. So that's also why we say it's for trials and expiations. And in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 4, item 18, we see that this concept that when we are here incarnated, right, there is a subset of the family, of the spiritual family that is incarnated, but there is a probably larger number of members of our spiritual family who are not here with us. They are still in the spiritual world, but they are helping us. That's another very important concept. We are not alone, and those members have helped us plan our incarnation. They are watching over us, and they are available to us, and they often have a lot of influence in our daily lives. whether we are conscious of that or not. They are having that influence. So that also tells us that, you know, it's always a good idea to remain connected to them. Sometimes we see them in dreams, sometimes we perceive their presence, sometimes we call them familiar spirits. But the thing is, they are, you know, walking down the same path along with us, just from the spiritual world. But they are there to help us. So, as we said, if you think about your family, probably you will acknowledge that there are people that you have a strong affinity with, right? And those are probably spirits that you have worked with, you have lived with throughout many incarnations, and you have developed that very strong bond, right? And that explains sometimes why you have that natural affinity. And some people say, well, I have that, but with a friend, not with a family member. And that's fine, because probably that friend is part of your spiritual family. It's just not living in your household, but it's part of your spiritual family. And we all have those unexplained you know, affinities with so many people, and we don't know where it comes from. And sometimes it feels like we've known the person for a long, long time. It's just in our hearts. That can be explained because we are probably part of the same spiritual family. But the counterpart is again, that some spirits are either distant or they have aversion. So those are two different cases, right? Spirits who have aversion, as we discussed, probably we have something that has happened in the past, and we already have that inner feeling of aversion because we recognize in that spirit someone who has harmed us in some way. But they can also be strangers. And what is that? Those are spirits that, and I have that in my family, so probably, I don't know if you have that, but those are spirits that clearly are not part of the family. They're different. They you know, they are different. They came from somewhere. But they, you know, you can tell they are not part of the family. You don't have animosity towards them. Actually, sometimes you develop some deep affinity ties, but they are, you feel they are not part of the family. We have that in my family. We have, I'm not going to name names, but we have a person that is very different, has always been very different in the way they think, in the way they feel, in the way they act. And, you know, it's been clarified to us that spirit is a new member of the spiritual family. So sometimes the spirits also do that. They will mix and match. They will allow, and which makes sense, because that's how the universal family grows. But sometimes one family has something to offer, something to teach, and that spirit needs that experience. So those spirits outside of our, you know, existing spiritual family, they will incarnate with us, either to teach us something or to be taught something, to learn something, to be able to you know, learn a virtue or a particular skill set that they need for their incarnation. So that happens too. Now that explains a lot, doesn't it? And again, that also explains some very difficult relationships that we have today. We have what we call enemies from the past. Again, people that we have had issues. And sometimes that those issues, they don't materialize, they don't come to the surface initially. So how many of you have either personal experience or know of, you know, couples who seem to be in so much love when they met, and after a few years that love disappeared and they become enemies? And then you wonder, how come? They seem to get along so well. And now, you know, they are divorcing? Well, what happens is, again, chances are, and each case is a case, it's very difficult and dangerous to generalize, but chances are that they were spirits who had issues in the past. And again, God is perfect, and the way they engineer things is that probably for some reason they got attracted to each other. Chances are it was a physical attraction. It was a passion that brought them together initially, and they fell in love. And after that initial phase of enchantment goes away, they then recognize who they are. And that's where the issues start to surface. And then it sometimes becomes unbearable, and then they have to part ways. Until, at some point, they make peace. Because that's the other thing we learn, as I said before. Our conscience won't let us forget. That issue will have to be resolved at some point. That's something I learned the hard way in my life. That you cannot run from your problems. You can try and move countries. You can try and move jobs, cities. But if the problem exists, it will come after you. Because it's in you, and you have to deal with it. So, the best thing to do is to be aware of it and make an effort to deal with our problems when the opportunity, makes itself apart. Sometimes we're not ready, and it's okay to postpone. But just be aware that we really cannot postpone indefinitely. If that issue exists, they will have to come to terms with that issue. So I'm going to skip this one again. It can also manifest itself as, and we hear this. Some moms have a version of the baby, right? So even before that baby is born, there is a strong aversion between the two. Again, it can be explained because there is this feeling in the spirit that I know the spirit, I know where they come from, and we have some differences, right? So there is rejection, and that's natural. That's explained through the spiritual lenses. Sibling rivalry is another manifestation of this dynamic that we see from a spiritual perspective. Obviously, one thing I always caution people is we can not attribute everything to the spiritual life, right? I mean, sometimes we cause these things here and today. So, if I have 3 kids and I only pay attention to one of them as a father, chances are the other 2 at some point, will be bothered by that. That's going to become a nuisance. They're going to say, well, what's the deal? Why does Dad only pay attention to one kid? And they will be jealous of that much attention. And you cannot go back and say, oh, that's because of the spiritual family. No, I mean that's me only paying attention to one child. So careful there. But if you believe that we treat our kids the same way, and these kids have something between them, again, chances are that there is some jealousy there, because it could be that they were more attached to one of the parents in a previous life, and then because there are more people to share the love now, they are jealous. They feel that jealousy inside because they want that person for them, because maybe they were a couple in some other life, and that happens very, very often. So let's go back to the reincarnatory plan. And very quickly, just recap what that process entails. So first of all, there's the time between lives, and that's a question we always get. How long do we remain in the spiritual world before we incarnate? And the answer is, it depends. But it can be quite a long time. So let me draw an example here, because sometimes we don't think about this. Let's suppose that Suzanne and I have differences, okay, and I do something bad to Suzanne and his wife, and Suzanne discarnates, and I go on to live until I'm 80. So first of all, if Suzanne and I have to come back in some other life to mend this difference, okay, let's think how long that's going to take. So I'm here, I'll be 45 this year, so let's say I go on to live to 85. She's gone. She cannot come back to meet me until at least when I discarnate. So that's 40 years right there. Well then, God willing, the spiritual benefactors are going to come and help us, and in the spiritual world, we're going to meet, and we're going to repent. we're going to regret what we did, we're going to acknowledge what we've done, and we're going to become friends. We're going to say, you know, I recognize what I've done, and I want to mend that. So we are going to commit to coming back in a different life, so that we can try it again and get along. Well, now, that process can take a few decades, God knows, until we realize what I just described. So now we're talking about maybe another 50 years. So that's, you know, 90 years right there. Let's round it up to 100. Well, then we are born. She's born, I'm born. We have to be born, grow up, and let's say we have to marry in the next life. Then we have to be adults. But that's another 25, 30 years. So right there, we're talking about 130 years if everything goes according to plan. So sometimes people are like, wow, it takes that long for us to reincarnate? Well, yeah, because the conditions have to be there. Well, sometimes the conditions are not there, but believe me, we have plenty of debts with other people. So I don't have to wait, you know, I can go back sooner and try to mend my debts with somebody else before I mend my debts with Susanna. But here's the other thing. That difference is not going to go away. Even if now, you know, I'm mending my debt this life with Veronica, my debt with Susanna is still there. That's why we say sometimes it takes many, many lives for us to redeem ourselves, because we have created these differences with so many people. And we all hope that we don't have that many issues to deal with, so that we don't have to incarnate that many times. But just think of those who come to earth and cause mass, you know, issues, murders, you know. Again, you can think of any of the great names in history that have caused so much harm to so many people. Imagine how long it will take for them, right, to make amends. I mean, they will have to either incarnate so many times to recover from those issues, or they will have to come with a great mission to take care of many, 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 many of those souls in one life. And again, what I'm going to say now is total speculation, and I may be completely out of turn here, speaking out of turn by using this example, and he will forgive me, Eduardo. But we know from reading that many of these missionaries that we see, like Eduardo or other great spirits that do a lot of charity, they are always the first ones to tell us that they have a lot of debts from the past. The reason why they are in this situation oftentimes is because they come with a mission to redeem themselves in a really, really, really great way. And that's why we see, for example, so many kids under the care of Eduardo. Thousands of kids, right, in one lifetime. And that's an opportunity for a spirit like Eduardo, who has reached such a high level of enlightenment, to be able to deal with so many issues at one time. And we are lucky if we can do that, right? Instead of prolonging our suffering through many, many lives. So, generally, the time between lives is longer in more evolved spirits. First, because they have less issues to deal with, they don't have to come back so often. And the second, there is a material component that I won't be able to explain because I don't understand myself. But in some books they explain that the very makeup of our pure spirit doesn't allow us to remain in the spiritual world for an extended period of time. I will find the book. But it says that there is a material element of it that doesn't allow us to stay, I mean, we get it in balance and we have to reincarnate. And that makes actually some sense if you think about it. As I said before, less evolved spirits, they don't have awareness and they don't have a chance to plan their incarnations, so they go through a process called compulsory incarnation, which is a standardized incarnatory process led by spiritual mentors. And a relatively small percentage of us have the privilege of planning our incarnation. And that then allows us to choose the family we're going to incarnate in because of what I described. Because I want to come back and I want to, make amends with Susanna. The type of body, because sometimes we create imbalances in in the way we use our bodies that will manifest as diseases or illnesses. as I said, diseases and physical body challenges, gender, and timing. It's timing again, as I said. The timing is important because it allows us to meet those spirits that we have to interact with. And more importantly, all of this is highly, highly assisted by spiritual benefactors. The number of spirits involved in one incarnation is amazing. When you read about how many spirits, how many spiritual benefactors have to work to help us plan and incarnate, it's just amazing. One other reason for us to really see incarnation as a gift, because it was not something that happened by chance, it was something that was the concurrence of many spiritual benefactors, many of which are part of our spiritual family.